We have to make sure that we understand what God's sovereignty is. And God's sovereignty means that God has the complete and ultimate authority and control over all creation, which means he is the supreme ruler over everything in existence, past, present, and future. There's no problem that he can't solve. And when we worship, y'all, when we can worship in the midst of our suffering, we're showing God that no matter what the circumstances are, that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. Y'all ready for the word? All right, come on, y'all go with me to the book of Job. Y'all know we've started a new series this month entitled Falling for You. And so as I told him at 8 o'clock, I feel like, God just has me in the vein right now. I feel like we have to get back to putting God first. We've been talking in the last few weeks just about getting back to putting God first in our lives, having him at the center of our lives. I honestly feel like as a society, we're getting further away from God as opposed to growing closer to God. And, we get caught up in busyness and productivity. We're doing a lot of things. We're here and there. And, if we're honest, we've been putting God on the back burner. We do everything that we do throughout the day, throughout the week, through just in our life in general. And, God kind of comes secondary now. But how many of y'all know God is supposed to come first? God is supposed to come first. And so he's really just been pulling on me hard about making sure that we get back to, as I said a few weeks ago, just keeping the main thing the main thing. We got to stop worrying about stuff that really doesn't matter, all the superficial things. And, even when we come in church, we got the lights and the cameras and the smoke and, and all that's nice. It makes for an enhancement of our worship experience, y'all. But it's really simply about God. It's all about God. And I really want us to get back, especially my generation and going down. I really want us to get to a place where we're getting back to putting God at the center of our lives and having him be the head of our life, and have, just us making sure that we let him know that he is what's most important. And not being outside, and not, even if it's things, it could be work, it could be school, it could be education. We have some things, everything is not bad, but the bottom line is, whatever it is, it comes secondary to God. And so I really want us to get back to, just making sure that we have him at the center of our life. And so we're going to continue that on today. And so we're looking at Job chapter 1, and we're going to read verses 6 through 22. And it reads, one day, the members of the heavenly court came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser, Satan, came with them. Where have you come from? The Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. Then the Lord asked Satan, have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil. Satan replied to the Lord, yes, but Job has good reason to fear God. You have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is. But reach out and take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. All right, you may test him, the Lord said to Satan. Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but don't harm him physically. So Satan left the Lord's presence. One day, when Job's sons and daughters were feasting at the oldest brother's house, a messenger arrived at Job's home with this news. Your oxen were plowing, with the donkeys feeding beside them, when the Sabians raided us. They stole all the animals and killed all the farm hands. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with this news. The fire of God has fallen from heaven and burnt up your sheep and all the shepherds. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, A third messenger arrived with this news. 3 bands of Chaldean raiders have stolen your camels and killed your servants. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, I told him this morning, somebody say, good gracious. While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with this news. Your sons and daughters were feasting in their oldest brother's home. Suddenly, a powerful wind swept in from the wilderness and hit the house on all sides. The house collapsed, and all your children are dead. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. Job stood up and tore his robe in grief. Then he shaved his head and fell to the ground to worship. He said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gave me what I had, and the Lord has taken it away. Praise the name of the Lord. In all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. You may be seated. You may be seated. The title of the conversation that I would like to have with you all on today is entitled, No Matter What. No matter what. The story about Job is about keeping God first in our lives, no matter the circumstances. It shows us how Job maintained his focus on God even during suffering, and it gives us the perfect example to follow. Prioritizing God as the most important part of our lives also allows us to navigate challenges with grace and resilience. Have you ever seen those people who are going through, but you wouldn't know it unless you had inside information? You know, those people who could be really down and out, but they show up every day like nothing is wrong. It's because they've decided that no matter what, they're going to keep God first. Job's story begins with him as a man of tremendous wealth and influence, described as blameless and upright. He had a large family and he was greatly respected. However, his life takes a dramatic turn when the devil challenges Job's devotion. Satan suggests that Job's faith is only because of his comfortable life, arguing that if everything was taken away, Job would curse God. But God, confident in Job's integrity, gives Satan permission to test Job, but with strict limitations. Now, I believe that should help somebody in here today, because we have to understand that sometimes God will allow the devil to test us. But what we have to realize is that there are some lines that the devil can't cross. What do I mean? He may be able to cause you to get sick, but he can't kill you. He might take your material possessions, but he can't destroy you. He may cause trouble on your job, but he can't put his hands on you. He may have permission to test you, but he has limits. And so for Job, the test began immediately. In a series of events, Job loses all his oxen, donkeys, sheep, camels, and even his servants. And the most devastating of them all comes when a wind knocks down the house where his children were, killing all of them. So in one day, y'all, Job's entire world was flipped upside down. Now, any normal person would have been heated, asking God, how could you let this happen? And many of us have found ourselves in that situation, and we've asked God before, or we've had people ask us the question that if God is so good, how does he let certain things happen to us? And I come by here to tell you today that it could be because he's testing you. And what Job does next, y'all, is kind of crazy, because he tears his robe and shaves his head because, of course, he's mad for a second, but then he falls to the ground to worship. Now, I'm just going to be honest with y'all. Job a better man than me, because if my kids messed around and died because God let the devil have his way, I wouldn't be in the mood to worship. And that's how we know we have to continue to strive to be able to have that kind of faith in God no matter what, because y'all, no matter what means no matter what. And we all say no matter what until no matter what happens in our life. And Job's response is a testament to his faith. He didn't blame God like the devil thought he was. Instead, this man talking about, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I'll be naked when I leave. The Lord gave it to me, and the Lord will take it away. Praise the name of the Lord. When I was doing my study, I said, Job is unshakable. Job was a bad boy, and that's why God knew he could test him in that way, because Job's identity and security wasn't rooted in his possessions or his family or his status, but it was in his relationship with God. He didn't need anybody to think he was all that based upon what he had. He understood that everything he had was a gift from God in the first place. Putting God first means recognizing his ownership over our lives and everything in them. All right. So in order to put God first in our life, no matter what, we have to first acknowledge God's sovereignty. We have to first acknowledge God's sovereignty. I see it in verse 21. It says, he said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gave me what I had, and the Lord has taken it away. Praise the name of the Lord. Now, the first thing we have to do is understand what God's sovereignty is. We have to make sure that we understand what God's sovereignty is. And God's sovereignty means that God has the complete and ultimate authority and control over all creation, which means he is the supreme ruler over everything in existence, past, present, and future. Somebody say, God is in control. And so Job's immediate response to his loss was not anger or despair, but it was worship, because he understood that God is the ultimate giver and taker. Job was able to accept God's complete control and authority over all things. And so to really put God first in our lives, we have to first acknowledge that he is sovereign. We have to accept the fact that he has complete control. This means understanding that we don't have or we don't own our lives, our possessions, or even our loved ones. They are actually gifts to us from God. And if we could have this mindset, it would help us to avoid the sense of entitlement that often leads to bitterness towards God when things don't go our way. Sometimes it didn't go your way because it wasn't meant to go your way. God is in control. So instead of seeing ourselves as victims of circumstance, we have to see ourselves as stewards of God's blessings. I'm going to say that again. Instead of seeing ourselves as victims of circumstance, we have to see ourselves as stewards of God's blessings. So the idea of divine sovereignty is foundational to a life centered on God. It's acknowledging that God is in charge. And most of the time, we live our life as if we're the masters of our own destiny, making plans and pursuing goals without even asking God about it. Who do we think we are? That's why the saying is, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. The story of Job reminds us that our control is really an illusion, y'all. We ain't got no control. We can make all the plans we want, but the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. And here's the thing, y'all. It's not a harsh reality. In fact, it should be a liberating one, because what it does is it frees us from the anxiety of trying to control everything. Know that a loving, all-powerful God is running things. We have to be willing to give up our desire for control and take a posture of trust. Do you trust God to have full control over your life? I'm going to ask you again, and you can answer to yourself. Do you trust God to have full control over your life? Y'all know in church we always pray, your will be done. But if we're going to believe in God and be down for God no matter what, we have to genuinely mean it. God, your will be done, no matter what it looks like, no matter how hard it is, no matter how uncomfortable it can be. I trust you and your plan for my life. It also means accepting loss without allowing it to destroy your faith. Just because something didn't go your way, we can't be like, oh man, I can't believe God let that happen, man. I'm done with him. No, we have to believe that if that's what happened, that's the way God intended it to be. Whether we believe it or not, whether it seems fair or not, even though it may hurt, we have to believe it's God's will for our life. When we acknowledge God's sovereignty, we're saying, God, you're in control and not me. And I trust you. And it's that trust that is the anchor that keeps our faith from drifting. If we can trust in God, that's the anchor that keeps our faith from drifting. So in order to keep God first in our life, we have to first acknowledge God's sovereignty. But secondly, we have to maintain a posture of worship. We have to maintain a posture of worship. It's in verse 20. Job stood up and tore his robe in grief. Then he shaved his head and fell to the ground to worship. And y'all, it's crazy because even after suffering the kind of loss that he has suffered, Job still chose not to complain, but to worship. And now, if that ain't the best example of keeping God first, I don't know what is, because it shows us that worship is not just for moments of joy and prosperity or something that we do when we come to church, but it's a discipline that we have to have in all seasons of our life. Worship in this context isn't just about singing songs, it's an attitude of the heart. And when we prioritize our worship, we turn our attention from our problems, but to the goodness of God. And this helps us to reshape the way we think and reshape our perspectives, and to remind us that our destiny is not in our circumstances, but in our relationship with God. Maintaining a posture of worship keeps our heart aligned with God's. And I don't know about y'all, but I want my heart aligned with God, because if my heart is aligned with God, then I'll be okay with everything God does. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't get frustrated. It doesn't mean that I won't have some tough days. But what it will do is help me come to the realization that even though it doesn't feel good in the moment, I know that because of who God is, it's going to be all right. Because of who God is, I know he has a plan. Because of who God is, I know there's a purpose. But in order to believe that, I have to keep a posture of worship. And keeping a posture of worship is an act of defiance against the devil's attempt to steal our faith. I'll say that again. Keeping a posture of worship is an act of defiance against the devil's attempt to steal our faith. Having a posture of worship while you're suffering is an act of faith, because it requires us to look beyond our immediate pain. And it proves to God, and it proves that God is greater than our problems and his goodness is greater than our circumstances. How many of y'all know there's nothing you can be going through that God can't get you out of? There's no sickness he can't heal. There's no addiction that he can't deliver you from. There's no bondage he can't break. There's no problem that he can't solve. And when we worship, y'all, when we can worship in the midst of our suffering, we're showing God that no matter what the circumstances are, that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. If God be for us, who can be against us? When everything is going wrong, y'all, naturally we get upset. But Job chose to engage with God through worship. He was able to trust in God despite the pain. It was his way of saying, though you slay me, yet will I trust you. And y'all, we sing the song that says, my worship is for real. Well, we know our worship is for real when we can worship when all hell is breaking loose. We know our worship is for real when we can worship when our world is being turned upside down. We know our worship is for real when we can worship when we don't know what's going on. We know our worship is for real when we can worship no matter what. This is a good place for somebody in here to say, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I still trust you. I don't know what's going on, but I'll praise your name. I don't know what's next, but I know you're worthy. No matter what my situation is, I will worship the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continually be in my mouth. So in order to keep God first in our life, number one, we have to acknowledge God's sovereignty. Number two, we have to maintain a posture of worship. But lastly, point number three, we have to reject the enemy's lies. We have to reject the enemy's lies. It's in verse 22. It says, in all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. Y'all, we have to remember that Satan's goal was to make Job curse God. That's the number one thing we have to remember when things aren't going right for us. The devil is trying to make you curse God. The devil wins when you give up on God. The devil wins when you lose your relationship with Jesus. The devil wins when you lose your connection with the church. Job's refusal to blame God shows his rejection of the enemy's lies. The devil wanted Job to believe that it was God that was causing his suffering. And if we're honest, even in our own lives, when things go wrong, we're tempted to blame God. But if we're going to keep God first, we have to reject the lies. We have to choose to trust God even when we don't understand the reasons for our pain. See, when we can reject the devil's lies, it shows that our faith is rooted in who God is and not what we can get from him. Because it shows that we'll keep the faith not only when the getting is good, but even when God may have to take some things away. See, when we can reject the devil's lies, it proves to him that no matter what may come my way, my faith won't be compromised. No matter what you throw at me, I know God is still in control. No matter what things look like, I know God is still able. Somebody ought to stand up right now and just let the devil know you wasting your time playing with my faith. I know you a liar and the truth is not in you. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. When we choose not to blame God, we shut the door on the devil's lies and we can declare our trust in God's perfect will. See, all the devil can do, y'all, is try to sow seeds of doubt and distress. He tries to convince us that God is either not powerful enough to protect us or not good enough to care. And we know that's a lie. For his word says the Lord is faithful and will strengthen you and guard you from the evil one. It says, give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. By not blaming God, Job was declaring, my pain does not negate God's goodness. I may not understand why this is happening, but I know who God is and I know he's good. See, when we can acknowledge God's promises and his track record, we got ammunition to fight off the devil's attacks. When the devil tries to lie to you, we can counter it with Hebrews 13:5 that says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. When the devil tries to lie to you, you can remember the scripture that says, I am the head and not the tail. When the devil tries to lie to you, you have to remember that I am the lender and not the borrower. When the devil tries to lie to you, you got to remember that by his stripes I am healed. When the devil tries to lie to you, you can remember Psalms 110:1 that says, I'll make your enemies your footstool. When the devil, come on, y'all not getting excited yet. When the devil tries to lie to you, remember, for every child of God defeats this evil world, and we achieve this victory through faith. Somebody shout, no matter what, no matter what, no matter what I'm going through, no matter what it looks like, no matter how hard it is, no matter how difficult it seems, no matter what people might say, no matter if they don't believe in me, no matter if they talking about me, no matter what my finances look like, no matter how my body feels, no matter what the doctor said, if you in here today and you riding with God, no matter what, give God a shout of praise. Come on, if you riding with him, give him praise. We got to get back to a place where we riding with God no matter what come our way. And y'all, I got to be honest with you, some things going to come your way. But we got to be like Job. We got to make up in our mind. It don't matter what the devil throw at us. Our faith not going to be compromised. I know it don't look like it right now, but God's still good. We got to be down for God no matter what. And I love the story. I told him this morning, you got to be careful when you declare it though. See, it sound good when we in here and we emotional. We say, yeah, no matter what. And then when no matter what happened, get real. Well, what you got to do, you got to think about the story. Think about how the story played out. God knew that he had a real one in Job. You got to hear how he talked about him. See, the devil say, he asked Satan, he said, well, what you doing here? Satan said, man, I've been down there patrolling the earth. You got to listen to how God said, you check my man Job out. He blameless. A man of complete integrity. And then the devil tried to talk trash. He said, man, of course he stands strong with you. You done did everything for him. You done blessed him with everything. You got a big family. The man rich. He said, but I bet you if you take everything from him, he'll curse you. And I love God. God had Job back. He said, all right, go ahead and try him. But God only did that because he knew what kind of man Job was. He knew it ain't matter what the devil threw at him. But I also like what he did. He said, go ahead and test him. He said, but don't touch him. See, he put restrictions on him. And that's what we got to remember. See, God might allow the enemy to test you, but he got restrictions.